Hi everyone, in this video we are going to understand what is alert processing rule feature in Azure. So APR is a powerful mechanism by which we can change the behavior of the fired alerts. Either we can suppress the notifications which we receive when an alert is fired, or we can add a particular action group so that people from one team like monitoring the alerts can receive alerts. Now APR is different from alert rule. Alert rule will generate alert and will notify you when something happens, while APR works on the fired alerts to change their usual behavior, like suppressing alerts when your resources are under maintenance or if we do not want to get notified during off hours. So for all this, we can utilize alert processing rule. Alright, so next the scope where we can apply the alert processing rule. So it can be a individual resources, single or different resource group, or an entire subscription. So by this way, we can get a granular management and use those rules to suppress those alerts during maintenance. So as we discussed earlier, we have two options in APR, which is either suppression or applying action groups. So by suppressing notifications, so APR can remove the action groups from alert during any alert which is fired, which will prevent notification. This is helpful during the planned maintenance or periods of anticipated high alert volume. And the next is apply action group, which will add action groups to all the fired alerts wherever we have defined the scope, ensuring that the correct recipients are notified. So even if you have not specified the recipient or the email in the original alert rule itself, we can use alert processing rule and define the action group for what we want to get notifications for any alert which are fired. So the question would be, why would we want to use the APR? So it could be a maintenance suppression, as I told earlier. It can help you with suppressing alerts during maintenance, and if those generates a lot of alerts, we can use them to stop those. Next would be management at scale. So we can have a lot of alerts in Azure. We can create them and we can use those alerts to get notified and monitor our critical resources. So for example, if you have a single team which monitors all your resources and creates a ticket or get the people notified that their resources are in critical state, so instead of configuring those emails on the alert rule itself, we can configure those on APR, and APR will take care of all those fired alerts, have the correct email specified. Other use case can be your email threshold management. So if I take you to the Microsoft documentation, so in the document you can see in the email section, in a single alert we can have up to 1000 email actions in an action group, and we cannot receive more than 100 emails every hour for each email address per region. So if we cross the limit of 100 email, we will not get any further notifications from the Azure monitoring service, and we'll get an email that our alerts will be stopped for this particular email for next hour. So when we face this scenario, we can use the alert processing rules to stop the alerts to trigger to the email during the maintenance or any activities we are performing. Next we have is how can we optimize the alert behavior or scheduling. So APR rules to whatever scope, that is the resource or multiple resources, whatever we have defined, we can let it be active for continuously. That will provide the ongoing control over alert behavior. Or we can set the APR for a one-time win, that is when we know we are going to perform the maintenance on our resources. Or third, we can have a recurring schedules like weekly maintenance or daily backups, or the scenarios when we don't want to get notified during the off shift hours. So that time we can set up a recurring schedule which will define during those time frames no alert would be sent to an email. Now the next is the key considerations for the effective APR usage. So in the APR we have two options, suppression and the applying action groups. So suppression takes priority over action groups. We have a resource that has two rules. One is for suppression and another one is for applying action group. So suppression will take priority over action group. We have another filtering option. With that we can narrow down to a particular resource. We are going to see that when we are going to set up those rules. And the next is we cannot have some automation. So the most companies have their own maintenance schedule, so we can set up a recurring schedule on those rules so that whenever the maintenance gets started, we do not have to manually turn on those rules to stop the notification and use the schedules to automatically take care of that. So this can help you with less error risk and more efficient alert management. So now let's head over to the portal and create an APR to mimic a scenario wherein we will suppress notifications, also add an action group so that we get notified instead of adding directly in the alert. So in the Azure, I've created two VMs in the separate resource groups. One is a Linux VM and another one is Windows VM. Both are in separate resource group. So I'll set up an alert on them which will notify me whenever the machines are rebooted. So I'll perform a stop start action on these VMs and see how the API actually works. First I'll create an alert itself for these machines. For that I'll go to service health first. The reboot alerts can be created on the service health. We'll go to resource health. I'll click on add resource health alert. So in the add resource health alert, you can see my scope resource group. I've selected all of the resource group. So my Linux VM is under the resource group VMs and my Windows VM is in the Windows resource group, and my resource type I have selected all. So my virtual machine is already selected, which comes under category virtual machine, and my resource will already be there, Linux VM and Windows VM. So next I'll go to condition. So the event status could be active, in progress, resolved and updated. This will notify me whenever the status of the resource goes to unavailable or degraded or available back. So now let's go to next action. For one scenario I'll add an email which will notify me, and in another scenario I'll remove the action group from the alert itself and add the action group on the API. So I'll define the name. My email is already selected. I'll go to next save, and everything else is good. I'll go to next details. I'll give the name VM is down, and I'll go to advanced option. It is already selected. Next tag and review and create. Meanwhile the alert is creating, I'll go to virtual machine and start my VM first, and I'll also open my Outlook. So you can see my VM has been started. If I refresh, they are in running status. Go to alerts and see the alert has been created. Alright, so you can see the alert is there. Now what is left is to create the alert processing rule. So I'll search for alerts first. I'll go to alerts, and then there is an option in the top of alert processing rules. Click on that and then create. So in the alert processing rules we will click on create, and we'll see we have first option of scope. So scope will define that the rule will work on those resources which you select, and as we discussed earlier, scope can be your entire subscription or your resource groups or a particular resource. So I'll click on select scope. I can select the subscription, I can select the resource group where I want to suppress my alerts, and I can select the individual resource as well, like my VM. So whenever any alert which will get triggered for that VM and the rule we have specified is to suppress, will not receive any notification. Now for this scenario I'll select my entire subscription, so that will cover my both resources, my Linux VM and Windows VM, and apply. Next option we have is the filter option. Even though we have specified the subscription, we can use the filter to narrow down a particular resources or resource groups or various other options which we get in filters. So let's see now the options which we have. So the first we have is an alert condition. In the alert condition we have two options, like the fired or the resolved. So any alert which gets triggered, we can specify that condition if the alert is resolved or just fired. We can specify the alert context, payload. So if I show you the alert payload, so this is the payload. Whenever an alert gets triggered, we have those details on that particular alert. So if we specify any particular option here, like percentage CPU in the alert processing rule, so every alert that have the percentage CPU, the rule will get applied. So next we have is the alert rule ID, where we want our rule to work. Next we have is alert rule name. We can specify the name of the alert here, and then we have a description. We can use the description here, that we know that whenever the alert gets triggered, it has that particular string. We can specify the value to have the rule work on those alerts. Then we have is monitor service. Under monitor service, Azure we have various services which sends the signals. Suppose if we want to use the Azure backup option, so the only the alerts which will get triggered for the backups, this alert processing rule will work. Next we have is the resource. We can specify the resource itself, like my VM name, and we have resource type also, in which we can specify whether the alert which we have set up is, do you want it to work upon only on virtual machines or the disk or the NIC, that we can specify here. Then we have resource group. So even though we have selected the scope here, the subscription itself, we can use the resource group section to have it narrow down it to particular resource groups, and the rest similarly the severity and the signal type. So now in this video what I'm going to do is, let's suppose out of the two virtual machines I have, I just want to monitor the Windows VM. So now in the alert processing rule, I've already selected the subscription as a scope, and I'm going to narrow it down to a particular resource group for which I want to suppress notification. For that, I can select multiple options here to narrow it down. First, I can go to alert rule ID, and the value I can specify here by then the properties, and then we can go to the JSON view. We have something called an ID in the second line. We'll just copy it down and we'll paste here. Next, I can use the resource group as well, and I'll select. So in here we can see the scope is the subscription, and we have applied some filters to narrow it down to a particular resource. For my case, all the VMs under resource group Windows RG, all the notification will be suppressed, and for this particular alert ID. Next, I'll go to settings. In the settings, I'll choose the suppress notification. Next, I'll choose the scheduling. In the scheduling, I can use multiple options here, like the alert will be active always or at a specific time or be a recurring one. So I'll go ahead with the always. Next, details. In the details, I'll choose the resource group where I want to keep the rule, and the rule name I'll give the relevant suppress notification from Windows resource group, and next tag, and then review and create. So the rule is created. Now in the virtual machine section, I've got two virtual machines in separate resource group, and by the rule, all the notification from the Windows resource group should be suppressed. Only the notification from the Linux VM will be received by us. So I'll just stop the VMs and see how the email gets triggered by the alert processing rule. So you can see here we have got the alert, and it's only for Linux VM, though we have stopped both of the VMs. So our alert for Windows VM is getting suppressed by the alert processing rule. Now we have tested this scenario for suppression. Now the next thing what we'll do is we'll remove the action group from the alert itself and set up the action groups in the API. So I'll go to alert rule. One more thing before we proceed with this scenario, even though we are not getting any notification in our inboxes, Azure still send the alert notification. Those we can see from the portal itself. If we go to the monitor and alerts, then we can see all those alerts being fired for Windows and Linux VM also. And if you want to see the alerts for the suppressed ones, we can see from the portal. Now to proceed with the scenario, I'll go to alert rules and then the alert. Now in the alerts, we can go to edit, and I'll go to actions, and I'll remove the action group which has my email address, and then save. So now you can see my action group has been removed here also. Now I'll go to the API and apply the action group from here. First of all, I'm going to remove the previous one and then create a new. So the alert I'm going to specify is any alert which gets triggered for the subscription will have the action group which I specify here, even though I've not set up the action group on the alert itself. So I'll select the scope, my subscription, and the filter I'm not going to apply anything here. Next, I'll go to rule setting. In the rule settings, I'll choose the apply action group, and herein I'll specify the one which has my email address. You can see the email from here, right? And the scheduling, I'll select always. Next, details, I can select the resource group. Rule name, I can select monitoring action group. I can add monitoring team also. Then next tag, and then review and create. So in this rule, what I've specified is any alert that gets fired for the subscription, all those alerts will be sent to this particular email address. Now to test this scenario, I'll start the machines, and now I should receive the email notification for both of my VM. Alright, so you can see here we have got an alert, and it's for alert. So now, even though our action group was removed from the alert was sent to the email because of the API, and we should receive alert for both of the VMs. So one is for Windows VM and another one is for Linux VM. Alright, so this is how we can do the suppression as well as adding an action group for our fired alert. Now before ending this video, I want to tell you some important points regarding these rules. So we have some limitations with API. So the rules work properly as long as they are in the same subscription as that of the resources on which the alerts are fired. And the next thing is we have an option of API, but if you want to disable the alert itself by going to the alert, and then we can use the option here of disable so that the email doesn't trigger itself at the first place. We can use this option also. But if our resource has the alert set up from multiple places, we have to update those alerts on all the places, and this can be error prone because whenever our maintenance is done, we may forget to turn on the alert back. So this is when the APR comes into picture. We have to set up those rules one time, and then the next time whenever there is a maintenance or we want to switch off the notification during the off hours, we just have to enable it. So that's all for this one, and see you in the next video. Thanks everyone.